Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'm coming to you today with a very important topic that recently came to my attention. Several days ago, Valve Corporation released a new feature on the Steam Workshop that introduced a paid model on gaming mods. Now, while the initial targeted game was Elder Scrolls Skyrim, Valve stated definite plans to expand this model to the remainder of Steam Workshop's modding community down the road. With the announcement touting Bethesda's famous modder-friendly outlook on their games, Valve included brief disclaimers that the new system would allow for a 24-hour risk-free trial, which would allow purchasers a no-questions-asked refund, as well as an option for free, paid, or pay-as-you-want option with their new system. Please bear in mind that the pay-what-you-want system did include a minimum price tag. As soon as these changes to the Steam Workshop were released by Valve, it was met with an absolutely enormous backlash from the community. So much so that after a mere couple of days, the entire system was, at least temporarily, scrapped and taken down. During those few days, massive downvoting and one-star reviews on any paid mods became widely prevalent. Huge amounts of forum threads came out demanding that the practice be stopped, and new content was even created protesting the paid model. Some of those mods, such as Protest Sign, No Paying for Mods, and Immersive Paywall, which has been since retitled Immersive Triumph Wall, are still holding the top spots on the most popular list today. Now, I want to try to get down a little bit into the meat of the matter that this entire controversy is creating. So many people are up in arms over Valve's attempt to make what has been called a wild cash grab that I felt compelled to shed a little light on the situation and offer a more level-headed way of looking at things. Now, granted, I'm not entirely without bias myself. I love free content. I would hate to see it disappear. After all, who would want to see their favorite mods suddenly locked behind a paywall? In a word, modders. Now, before you throw whatever you're holding in your hands at this particular moment at your monitor, just allow me to explain in a little more detail. Let's start off with the fact that I've seen so many statements that fall along the lines of, you should never charge for a labor of love, and even one statement on the petition at change.org, the one that got over 130,000 signatures, stated, modding is a hobby, not a career. Okay, so let's look at this with a little bit of perspective. Let's step back and really take a look at this. Now, the ability for modders to monetize the fruits of their labor has been, up until recently, virtually non-existent. Put simply, there was no legitimate way for them to get paid for their work. And yes, it is work. I mean, have you ever tried to create a mod for a video game? It's hard. If you're doing anything more than the most basic of things, it gets even harder when you worry about keeping the game balanced or writing a compelling story. And some of the more talented modders are doing that, and to great success. But modding has historically been forced to be a hobby and not a career because of this lack of infrastructure, this lack of their being able to monetize their content. Look at it this way. Even people that are doing what I'm doing right now could be considered in some way to be a modder. Taking someone else's work and including some of my own content, and through that actually transforming it into something that is in fact original. And thousands of YouTubers do this every day, many of them extremely well, and they've been able to monetize their videos for years. Some of them, a great deal of them, are even able to make a living doing just that. So I ask you, why should the modding community be any different? It really doesn't make any sense. And with that being said, the standpoint that modding should be free is, in my opinion, founded on the basis that there simply was no clear way for modders to receive compensation for all their hard work. And it's as that the culture surrounding modding being free is somewhat archaic in this day and age. I mean, if it were available to people before, you can bet your shirt that they would have been charging for it. They really would have. I mean, people like making money. Yes, they do this because they love it. They love the game. They want to They want to create something to become a part of that world. And I see that. I get that. It's great. But at the same time, if you could do something you love and make some money at it, would you still do it for free? Honestly? No. I don't think most of you would. And, especially when you're looking at something like a mod that does take considerable amount of time and effort. Uh, Frankly, I don't mind one bit seeing that mods become monetized. I really don't. Now, before I go off down the rabbit hole a little bit too far, let's backtrack a little bit and look at some of the potential ramifications of paid mods. And first off, technically, modding isn't really legal. Uh, Granted, many of you may not know that, but it is, in fact, the truth. Modding is a lot of the times copyright infringement. And the only reason why so many mods have been able to get away with this kind of thing in the past is because generally one or two reasons. First, allowances may have been made by the developers, such as, well, Bethesda Studios would be a perfect example of this. They've always been a DRM-free company and very open to the modding community. Heck, in the past with older versions, older Elder Scrolls games, they'd actually put construction kits on the disc for you to be able to download, or for you, I say download, I'm drag my mind a little bit further into the past here, for you to be able to install right off the disc and be able to make your own changes to the game, make your own mark on this world. And yeah, that was always fantastic. And, companies that allow and encourage this with their games and with their community has always been one of the shining examples that Bethesda is. The second reason would be because of free mods. They fall into this kind of legal gray zone. And I say that because it is technically legally copyright infringement. But at the same time, you didn't make any money at doing it. I mean, nobody made a cent off of it. So if you make a total conversion mod for Skyrim, or if you make a total conversion, there are actually a couple of conversion mods for Sins of a Solar Empire out there. A couple of the most notable ones where there was a Star Trek mod and also a Star Wars mod. Both of them I have played. They're a great deal of fun, and I would highly recommend them. They really add a nice fresh spin to the game. But that's getting sidetracked a little bit. Let's try and get back to where we were. Yeah, it is technically copyright infringement, and modders aren't prosecuted for this because they're not making any money off of it. So, paid modding would change that drastically because legality aspects would come into play, and copywritten content such as Lord of the Rings content for Skyrim again, and many other things. Basically, whenever you're taking something from another franchise and creating content to put into this game and making money off of it, that would be copyright infringement. So, as that is an example, those style of mods could not legally be monetized without facing a massive, massive lawsuit right in the face. There are a lot of legal issues to go with monetizing game mods, and I was a little surprised that Valve would be willing to wade out into those so murky waters. That is definitely them taking a risk with that. Now, with that being said, let's look at the monetization numbers a little bit. These were released on a couple of sites regarding all of this. Now, Valve Studios would take 30%, which, so it has been claimed by other sites. I have not been able to actually factually verify this, although I have been trying to. They state that 30% is a fairly standard amount for Valve to take. In addition to that, however, Bethesda Studios would be earning 45% off of each individual sale. Now, this does leave a disgustingly paltry 25% to go to the modder themselves, who's actually doing the work. Now, before you jump on me about that, you have to bear in mind one thing. Valve is taking 30%, which I'm actually fine with. I mean, well, yeah, the system seems rather turnkey for them, and they'd probably be making money hand over fist. They'd actually be shouldering a pretty significant legal burden here, especially with all of the massive shades of gray that modding has been in the past and will continue to be. Them even being willing to shoulder that means that they probably do have a plan laid out first off to be able to handle potential lawsuits, but there would eventually be potential lawsuits and court settlements to come out of this new feature for the Steam Workshop. I mean, I can pretty much guarantee you that. But Bethesda is taking 45%. 45? Really? I'm going to say it again. 45% for Bethesda. Uh, that that doesn't work for me. It really doesn't. I mean, Bethesda, I love you. You're a great studio. You make great games. I love your stuff. I really do. But that being said, no, no, you really can't. No, stop. Stop doing this. No. Because you had a clear business model when you came out with this game. You did. You knew you were going to make money off the sales. You had projected sales. You're like, okay, we're going to release a couple of, DLCs or, a couple other pieces of content that will make some additional money off of that. And that's where we're going to make our money at. Okay, done. Great. That's it. Okay, good job. You did a great job. It's a fantastic game. Now go home. Okay? The majority of this money should be going to the modder, the person who's actually creating this new content. I can understand Valve's 30%. I cannot understand Bethesda making. I can understand Bethesda making something, but I can't understand them making nearly half. Not by far. I would be expecting to see, maybe 15, 20%, maybe 25%. But the vast majority of this monetization should be going to the modder directly, and it appears that this wasn't the case. Now, taking that into account, I'm actually fairly glad that everyone managed to band together and the protest was successful and this was shut down, because this was actually very unfair to the modder themselves. It was. Now, I do like the idea of monetizing modding content. I do. Don't get me wrong. Don't don't roll me in with a bunch of people that say, "Oh, modding's always been free. It should always continue to be free." I'm not one of those kinds of people. I'm really not. Um, but yeah, 45%. Come on, that's just way too much. Way, way, way too much. Now let's take a look at what would happen though if this was able to go through and mods were actually allowed to be monetized. I should say when, not if, because I guarantee you, Valve has a system in place. They're going to use it. They are. That's not in any kind of doubt at all. They're probably just going to change the tactic a little bit, maybe back up, maybe go towards another game first instead of coming right back at Skyrim. Maybe leave Skyrim for last is probably what they're going to do. It's probably what I would do, because 130,000 people protesting about mods for one specific game, that's actually very significant. But yeah, let's take a look at what would happen if mods were be allowed to be monetized. I mean, people would actually start seeing some return for all their effort, firstly, which is fantastic. I love that. People would actually go, "Hey, look at this. I got some extra scratch for these 50, 60 hours I spent working on this mod. That's awesome." Secondly, the incentives for potentials for income would attract more talent to the general fields. Content would improve for the paid systems, as people would, again, have more incentive to invest more time and effort into what they're creating. I'm by no means an idealist. I understand the fact that doing something for free out of labor of love is, noble in the vast majority of circumstances, simply due to there being, but, more income means more capital. is basically what I'm trying to get at here. And that would mean a greater ability to invest more into what is being created, more time, more efforts, better equipment, better computers for being able to render objects and things like that, for, custom designs, competent story writing, decent voice acting for, entire new story arcs. A lot more dedicated effort being put forth would all be made possible by allowing creators to monetize their content. That, I really don't see much of a downside there. The only downside I could see is if people that already have their content would be suddenly have the content on their computer locked behind a paywall. Now, if Valve were to do this, they should actually include something that states you already have the content now, so you get grandfathered in. You get to keep what you have, but anything new from here on in, you'll have to pay whatever the modder feels is appropriate, whether it be, the 50 cents or $1, or the, let the customers decide with a, bare minimum amount. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all that we have to go over tonight. I've really enjoyed this, and I hope that people try to maybe calm down just a little bit, maybe take a deep breath, relax. When it's all said and done, this has been something that has been coming down the pipe for a long time now. You know this, you do. When we're in a world dealing with locked content on the disc in order to release it as DLC at a later date, monetizing the modding community really isn't that far of a stretch. And if it's done right, it will be awesome. But I think I've reached the end of my rambling. And with that being said, this is SidAlpha, and I'll talk to you soon.